Well, joining me now in the studio is academic researcher and international secretary of the American Communist Party, Christopher Halali. Christopher, thanks for coming in to speak with us today. So we saw the Israeli ambassador smiling while he left the Russian foreign ministry, while he refused to answer our correspondents' questions about the IDF strike that nearly hit our colleagues here at RT. What do you make of all of this?
Well, of course, Israel's a rogue state, and this is a rogue action. This was an action that violated international law. Once again, we saw the targeting, the deliberate targeting of journalists. We've already seen over the course of many years the deliberate targeting of civilians. It's only been in the recent where people now understand that there's also been the deliberate targeting of journalists. As Maria Zakharova said, 200 killed in Gaza. Not to mention, we remember Abu Akleh, who was killed in West Bank, right? So there are many who've been killed over the years. This was an attempted strike on a very, very well-known, well-loved, even by myself, I'm very close to both of them, journalist team in Lebanon, who are bringing the truth. They are reporting the facts on the ground as they are. And that is dangerous to the Israeli authorities. Will they be held accountable? Clearly, who's going to hold them accountable? Of course, the Russian Foreign Ministry did what was right to demand a response, but the Israelis still act with impunity. And we see that happening. I hope that they will cease this type of aggression, especially against the media. But sadly, this is the state of affairs, the natural state of affairs for them.
So Israel, of course, denies that the journalists were targeted, but my colleague Stephen Ali said that they could clearly see a fighter jet approaching while they were recording at the scene. It does appear, when you look at the video, to have been a targeted close-range airstrike. Is there any chance that the IDF didn't know that our team was on that bridge? I mean, is that a possibility in your mind at all?
It's a remote possibility because the Israelis have so many eyes on the south of Lebanon. They have not only aerial assets in the form of jet fighters, they have drones, they have human personnel and human surveillance. The whole place is watched very carefully. And we've seen that over the course of the past 3 years. They've been bombing it. They've occupied parts of it. They have forward operating bases there. They've seized territory. I mean, this is not unknown to them. What is a fact is that that bridge was already hit. They struck it again while that team was there. And they didn't inform the Lebanese army outpost, which was next door, which could have informed the team, get out of the way, they're going to strike again. They said in a vague way, we're going to strike all of the bridges. But they did not make it apparent that they were striking there. And they have made it apparent in some other situations before. But in this case, they did not.
So the RT team was targeted while they were recording near a Lebanese army base, which they had permission to do. There was no Hezbollah activity nearby. Why do you think the IDF claims otherwise? I mean, is this just a situation where they think that people will just believe them?
Of course, and not only that, they're going to justify all of their actions by the fact that Hezbollah represents an imminent and existential threat to the state of Israel. And they use that as a pretext to not only go after Hezbollah fighters, to destroy civilian infrastructure, to destroy these bridges, hydroelectric power, electricity, you name it, pharmacies, schools, mosques, churches. We've seen this time and time again. This is not an outlier. If it was an outlier, maybe we could understand this situation, but it's not an outlier. This is a pattern of behavior, a pattern of destructive behavior, a pattern of deliberate behavior. So in that sense, I do not see it in any other way other than the fact that this is an attempt to silence voices and to continue to destroy the south of Lebanon for the possibility even of annexation, which some Israelis are saying. They might be far right and fringe, but they represent an attitude and a strain of thought that the south of the Litani River will be seized by Israel in this war.
Christopher, the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova pointed out that the strike came against unarmed civilians. I mean, these are journalists. They're carrying microphones and cameras, not weapons. The news crew's vests bore clearly visible press markings. You said that this is an international crime. What crime was committed here, and how could those responsible be held to account?
Clearly identified press, clearly identified media personnel are protected under international law. They are allowed to go into conflict zones. They are allowed to report because the freedom of information and the freedom to access knowledge and up-to-date information on what's going on the ground is essential, not only to warfighting, but also to the people living in the country and abroad. So journalists are protected by all norms and statutes under international law, the Geneva Conventions. It's very well laid out there. They are civilians, number one. Their job takes them into danger's way, and so therefore they are not to be targeted. Medics are not supposed to be targeted, and other medical personnel. There's a whole range of civilians that aren't meant to be targeted. But we saw here clearly labeled, clearly identifiable. There was no, they weren't carrying pistols, they weren't carrying weapons. If they were carrying those, then that law begins to be abrogated. It's not allowed, it doesn't apply to them anymore. Now they're considered combatants, but these are non-combatants, media personnel. So it's a violation of many it's not only a violation of international law, it's also a violation of the laws of armed conflict. So there's many things that have been broken here. And of course, it was very funny when Steve spoke to the Minister of Information of Lebanon, who said, were you wearing a helmet? It's not a requirement to wear a helmet. As long as you wear something identifiable, that identifies you as press, you are not to be targeted, you are not to be sniped, you're not to be bombed, you're not to be grabbed and taken. That protects you. And he is a recognized, not only recognized, he has press credentials. It's not that he's just some random blogger there. He has press credentials like myself and you and many others, that we have press passes, we have press IDs, and that should have protected him. Clearly in the situation, it didn't.
So I want to go back to Israel's justification for this strike. The IDF is claiming to have carried out a precision strike on a crossing used by Hezbollah, but this attack happened on a bridge near a Lebanese army base. Those are forces Israel claims it's not fighting against. I mean, what do you make of this discrepancy?
Well, the discrepancy, of course, is very apparent that the Lebanese army is not only not involved with Hezbollah, but is actively pursuing Hezbollah. We've seen that the Lebanese state is trying to curb Hezbollah's attacks, is trying to seize their weapons, is trying to, kind of clamp down on this before this escalates. So this is not a crossing that would have been used by Hezbollah. It is a crossing that would be used by people. And since there are 1 million people displaced in the region, that is part of the story here. Part of the story is that this is the destruction, the deliberate destruction of civilian infrastructure to continue to ethnically cleanse, as Steve said in his report, ethnically cleanse the territory, to not allow them to come back, because they did come back after the previous war fighting that happened over the past few years. In this situation, we see that not only was Hezbollah not there was nobody around except for the army, the Lebanese army. So what's the point of destroying the bridge if not to, number one, attack the crew that's there and deliberately target them, and number two, to deliberately target and destroy civilian infrastructure with the point of not allowing people to come back to their homes.
So considering all the evidence known so far, and we have the video of the missile striking right behind Steve. It's even been widely played in the West, which is unusual,
yes,
considering the circumstances. How plausible is it for the IDF to continue denying that it's targeting civilians and journalists despite bombing the bridge in broad daylight while several journalists were knowingly and visibly working there? I
mean, Gaza is leveled. We see Israel carrying out the supreme crime of aggression against Iran not once, twice. And nobody's holding them accountable. They can continue to do this day after day, week after week, and nobody will hold them to account. They will continue to invoke their rights, their existential threats that they feel justified in preempting and striking wherever they want, whenever they want. If nobody will hold you accountable, what's the point of the law? The law is meant to be applied so that you can feel the pressure if you violate the law. If nobody holds you accountable, the law is meaningless. It's just on a piece of paper. That's the problem here. The problem is there's nobody to hold them accountable. There's been no sanctions. There's been nothing that has, put the pressure on Israel except diplomatically. So Israel will continue to do this, sadly. Israel has a pattern of behavior. We know it now. It's getting even more aggressive. It's getting even more reckless. And we see that now with this war on Iran, which is ready to plunge the global economy into recession. And now 1 million displaced in Lebanon, not to mention other battlefields that are coming in the fore. This is a very dangerous situation, and sadly, Israel shows no restraint at this point. You said earlier that more than 200 media workers have reportedly been killed during the war in Gaza, with the IDF blamed for their deaths. I mean, reporters, journalists in war zones, their lives are always at risk. But it used to be that media workers were held sacred and as you said earlier, not targeted. Certainly during this conflict, that's not been the case. Why do you think the Israeli government seems to have so little regard for journalists? It has so little regards for journalists because they present a narrative that contradicts the main line, the main state narrative. If Israel is saying, we're not targeting civilians, we're not destroying, we're not in the process of ethnic cleansing, we're not committing a genocide, and so on and so forth, and people go and they speak to people on the ground and they said, we were just residential, they knocked down this residential building, that one, and journalists start putting all this footage together and they end up seeing that the entire city's been leveled. Well, of course, then they start to say, well, these are civilian targets here. The civilians are being killed. So reporting on the numbers, reporting on the facts, reporting on the truth on the ground, that is dangerous to the Israeli authorities. That's why they didn't allow. We even have people like Piers Morgan, who's not necessarily a pro-Palestinian activist, go and say, if you really want the truth to be out there, why don't you let Western journalists in? Well, we want to protect them. We want to protect them is euphemism for, if you come, we will target you. We will only allow you in if you're one of us and you speak our narrative. If you do not, then you're sufficient game. You're a sufficient target. And we saw that, the deliberate strikes on journalists in their vehicles. And if Israel has control over intelligence and they seem to know where everybody is, well, then it's clear that this person's in the car. You can check the phone. You're connected to everywhere. You have eyes everywhere. That's the problem here. The problem is that the journalists continue to be targeted because they bring a narrative that contradicts what the Israeli government is trying to say in international forums and in the media at large.
So based on what you've just said, it's clear that Israel can directly target specific individuals. So it seems like Steve and Ali were targeted but not killed. What kind of message was Israel trying to send? And do you think that this is going to resonate with other journalists? Do you think that we're going to see other journalists hesitate to come and cover the war like this because their lives literally could be on the line?
I mean, for journalists like me, it makes me want to go. Once I'm healed up, I told them already. I contacted Ali and Stephen. I said, I'm ready to come. Let me know. Because for me, what it shows is that they want to silence. And Steve said it so eloquently yesterday. We won't be silenced. We won't be silenced. Reporting on the ground in the south of Lebanon is a dangerous job. He knows that. He's been in the Donbass. I've been in the Donbass. We've reported from different war zones. We were in Yemen together with the three of us all together in Yemen while the U.S. was bombing us in Sana'a. The point is that we need to be voices on the ground to present the truth and the facts to the international audience. They need to know what's going on. So I don't think that this is going to hinder Steve in any way. I think actually it makes us even stronger and more dedicated to our job, which is to bring the truth. That's what this RT and so many other journalistic outlets are. That's our whole game. That's our whole position, is we want to bring the truth. We want to bring the narrative for the people to understand what's going on in the proper context, with the proper facts, with the people on the ground and their voices being heard. So I think certainly Israel sent a message. I think they wanted a different result. They didn't get it. And they've emboldened now two people to continue to speak the truth. And now with a much bigger audience, Steve has already jumped, I think, over 100,000 followers on X.
Amazing.
I hope he gets 1 million because he deserves it. He's doing a lot of work. He's always on the ground. His team is one top-notch. Him and Ali are the best. And so I hope that they continue to do the good work.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you about is the Western coverage of this event, because like I said earlier, it's a bit unusual that the Western media would cover journalists being targeted by the IDF in the war zone. But I saw two reports earlier, one on CBS News and one on the BBC that showed the video, but didn't lay blame on who was responsible for the missile. I think the headline was something to the effect of Russia Today journalists escaped death because missile lands nearby. I mean, no mention of who fired that missile. Why do you think we're seeing coverage like this of not holding Israel to account?
Because they're in bed with the Israeli narrative. A lot of these journalistic outlets are either government controlled in the West, and they have some connection to of course, through the government to the Israeli state, or they're owned by people who support the Israeli narrative. For example, Barry Weiss now is CBS, right? So you have this whole thing. Yes, lands. What do you mean lands? This is a GPS. This is a guided bomb. This is not some random, this is not World War II where you just open, the gates at the bottom and, the doors at the bottom of the plane, just let the bombs fly where they go. This is a GPS munition. This is a munition that you can target, pinpoint. They knew where they were hitting. They were not stupid about it. They missed a little bit by a couple meters. And Stephen and Ali were very lucky in their team. The point here being that clearly the Western media wants to present a certain narrative. And they want to continue to absolve Israel of its crimes. They've done so when we have 100,000 plus people killed. I mean, for two journalists, forget about it. Who cares? Shireen Abu Akleh, they didn't say much about her. Right. And she was an American citizen.
Yeah,
never mind, and this was an American citizen and a journalist, credentials in the US too. So for me, when I see this, I see a pattern, same old, but the problem for the Western media is people are waking up to this now. This isn't 20, 30 years ago where this was, outside the realm of understanding. With social media now, everybody can go and see Steve reporting live, can see RT, even though they try to ban it in the West, and can see the truth for themselves. And I think a lot of people are saying today, come on, guys, this narrative doesn't work with us anymore.
All right, well, we're going to leave it there. Academic researcher and international secretary of the American Communist Party, Christopher Halali. Christopher, thank you.
Thank you.